Okay, we're back, and it is time to finally talk about The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang, the second book in the Poppy War trilogy. I have so much to say about this book, not as much as I had to say about the first one, but still a good deal. So we'll see how long I talk again. But oh, this book was so good. I'm still floored and reeling from what she did with this. So let's go ahead and just get right on into it. Same thing as before, I will be starting with a brief summary of the book, and then I will give you my spoiler-free review, and then I'll give you a little heads up, and we'll go into my spoiler-filled thoughts. I don't have as many of those this time. I think most of my attention will be put onto the spoiler-free part, but again, let's just go ahead and get right into it. Book 2, The Dragon Republic, the second book of the Poppy War trilogy by R.F. Kuang. This was published, I did this last time too, and I really should learn to check these things before I press record, but oh well. It was published in 2019. The Dragon Republic continues to follow Rin in the aftermath of the Muganese invasion, with particular attention to her role as the famed Spearly shaman, learning to channel the Phoenix's power. The second installment plunges us into a story about the lingering effects of war, the fractures that cannot be easily healed, and leans predominantly on the development of our familiar cast of characters as they face an inevitable civil war. So spoiler-free thoughts, just really quickly. This book rocked. It's just, again, it's so incredibly impressive what R.F. Kuang has managed to do with this series, and it's only the second book. We're not even done yet. But again, I'm going to divide this into those 5 sections that I am trying to focus on for rating my books, and I'll start with characters. This easily gets a full start from me again. Her character work in this is just astounding. She manages to develop the cast that we are already familiar with while also adding a ton of new characters, and she just manages to keep track of all of them so well. She's really good about introducing new elements slowly so that you can keep up, but it does just make the entire thing feel so expansive. So incredibly well done, as usual. I especially loved the characters in this because she allowed for so many scenes of tenderness between the characters. That was something that I felt was kind of lacking in the first book. It was there in the first book, but that was my one thing that I really struggled with the last time, was feeling like I couldn't really connect to any characters, understanding that maybe that wasn't for me as a reader anyway. But I felt so much more emotionally invested in the characters this time because it wasn't just about them going to war and learning to be these military kids. It was so much about their friendships and their loyalty to one another, especially in the aftermath of this enormous war that just happened. Everybody has no idea what to expect for what comes next. There's infighting in all the different provinces. There's a civil war brewing. So just the way she managed to portray their loyalty to one another and their love for one another, and all these really small, sweet moments between big, destructive, gut-wrenching things is what made me so much more invested this time. I loved getting to read about these characters, and I felt so much more attached to them this time around. Loved them desperately. Rin especially, I'm really impressed by. I can tell that a lot of this book was spent using the time on the page to mature her. Not that she wasn't mature in the last book, but she still had some struggles with immaturity and impulsivity, and she still does, but you can see how Kuang is taking the time to have her learn her lessons in a way where she really understands them for herself, accepts those things for herself instead of somebody just telling her what to accept and what to understand and how to carry herself and behave, what she should focus on, etc. She became more of her own person this time, and it takes a while, but you can see her wrestling with that the entire time, which I really appreciated. It made her feel that much more relatable in the second installment. The way that she develops all the friendships in the book was really interesting to me. You can just tell, I think she had fun kind of building up those bonds between characters that you wouldn't necessarily expect. And this book to me really was about the friendships. There's so much more obviously going on, and there's so much more to comment on, but for me, reading it personally, that is what I focused on the most because that's what felt like the most important piece at the end of the day. With everything going on, it was the fact that they were friends, the fact that Rin has a community of people that matter to her, that she's willing to fight for. I loved that, especially with the psych. I loved the way that she interacted with the psych. It was very complex and complicated, and obviously, as always, tensions were high, but just seeing the way that they were committed to one another even amidst all of that was really special to see on the page. And Katai, I loved Katai in this book so much. He was already my favorite character in the first book, but just the way that she develops this sweet little military strategist who comes from a very posh background and turns him into just this ruthless realist while also keeping him as the heart of everything that's going on. It's just so beautifully done. I loved Katai so much. That's my boy. I just love him. Characters, full star, easy. That was the best part of this book for me. Plot, I'm going to go ahead and also give a full star for this. It was very fast-paced, but in a way that felt digestible. It's not like a fire hose of stuff coming at you at once. She manages to place all the plot points evenly apart so that you feel the escalation happening naturally, and it's not too much to take in at one time, but it does move very quickly. It takes you along with it very easily. She did a good job of closing old plot lines and opening new ones in very balanced succession throughout. And I just couldn't help wanting to come back to it every single day. My routine right now is I try to read for about an hour before bed, and I looked forward to that hour every single day I was reading this. I knew I got to go back to my book and I just couldn't wait. So yeah, she did a wonderful job this time around with plot. She did the first time again, but I was so much more invested this time around, and I felt so much more compelled to continue to keep coming back to it. With her writing style, I'm also going to give a full star there. I don't have as much to say about that this time around. It is very similar to the writing style in the first book. I will say I continue to be impressed by the way that she manages to maintain her tone and her voice between books, especially with the escalation of the plot and just the expanding cast of characters. This whole thing feels like it's just getting so much bigger and more complex, and she manages to be the same writer throughout, which is a very difficult thing to do. That's a skill that takes a lot of time to build and to maintain. So I'm really impressed with the way that she managed to keep everything feeling like it's the same story while also making it feel just bigger and bigger as it continues. So full star again for writing style there. Setting and immersion, I'm also giving a full star here. She did so much more work with setting and immersion this time than she did in the first book, I feel like. Not that she didn't in the first book, because she spent such a good deal of time zooming into particular locations. So I'm already forgetting the name of the floating city, but the Pirate Queen's floating city, going there, and to the Autumn Palace, and to the House of Yin, and just seeing all these different locations come into more detailed light made the book feel so much more grounded in the world this time around, and it was just fun getting to explore all these different locations and just to see how vast this world really is. Because we see various locations in the first book as well, but it's so focused on just the military pieces of what's going on, where this felt more like, here's what else is going on in the world, even though we're still focused on the fact that there's a new war happening, the fact that we're recovering from this war that just happened. The focus felt a little bit more on, at least with the immersion for me, it just seemed so much more detailed, and like we got to kind of play around in what was actually out there. So that was very fun for me this time as well. And then pacing, I touched on this kind of already with plot, but again, a full star probably if I'm talking objectively. She handles the escalation of things just so well. Again, it's a fast-paced book, but you don't feel like you're getting a fire hose of information. She balances those really gut-wrenching, difficult moments with those moments of tenderness between friends. And so everything just feels like we're drawing towards an inevitable conclusion, and we can sense the tensions growing, we can sense the plot escalating, but she pulls you along at such an even pace. It's just very well done, as usual. I'm not surprised at all with what she did in the first book too. And with the escalation being so balanced, those twists and those sucker punch moments hurt all the more to read because she was balancing it so well with those moments of tenderness throughout. So, again, R.F. Kuang's just great. Endlessly impressed. She's one that I'm going to continue to read even beyond the series, I think, because I just continue to hear incredible things about her, and obviously I'm seeing the evidence of it in what I'm reading of her stuff right now. So, nicely done, Miss Kuang. I love what you're doing. She's never gonna watch this. It's fine. For more personal thoughts, I think I want to save that for the spoiler-filled review. But again, this is a book that I loved it so much, and I loved it even more than the first book, and it's one that I know is going to stick with me, and I know is going to be like top of my list probably by the end of the year, at least as far as rating books that I'm going to read this year. But I can't say that it's a new all-time favorite again. I'm feeling very similarly to when I read the Broken Earth trilogy last year, where the entire time I was just so floored by what N.K. Jemisin was managing to do with these books, and I was invested in the story, and I really liked the characters, and at the end I just felt this emotional rawness, and it became one of the best things that I have read this past year, but I wouldn't necessarily readily recommend it to everybody. I don't think it's necessarily everyone's cup of tea. And again, with just my heart for things that are a bit more hopeful, there were pieces of it that I struggled with. But that's just me as a reader. It's not an objective opinion. So I feel like I'm falling into the same camp with these books where I think they're incredible and I'm really enjoying them. But there are certain pieces of it that, again, make me hesitate to recommend to everybody. I think everybody should read this because, no, I don't. I think some people will really struggle with it and have a difficult time getting through some of those messier pieces. Not messier pieces, but more brutal pieces. So I'm not going to say it's a book for everyone. Do I think what she's trying to accomplish is significant and really important? Yes. Again, is this one that I'm going to be like, all-time favorite, hands down, everyone should read this? Probably not. But all that said, it is near perfect. And I really do not have that much to criticize. So I think overall, and I've never given a rating like this before, but I think I'm going to give it 4.75 stars. Like, it is just about like the peak, I think, of what you can read in a story. I enjoyed it so much. But again, trying to be a little stingy about those 5-star reads and maintain those for books that I do want to recommend to every single person ever in the world, and that will become my all-time favorites that I continue to return to years down the road. So that's just me being stingy with my 5-star ratings. But again, it's just, it's a pretty perfect book in my opinion. So 4.75 stars. Very great. Very good. Time for spoilers. Okay. Everyone who doesn't want spoilers, go away now. You're done. You're dismissed. Those of you who want the spoilers, who have read this, we all here? Good? Okay. Frickin' Najah? I'm so angry. And oh my gosh, Homeboy made me so mad. I feel so betrayed and heartbroken by his betrayal. I so believed he was going to be, no, what's happening? Oh, hold on. My light is freaking out. You good, bro? There's a lightning storm in my room. I think we're fine now. Anyway, what was I talking about? Najah! Frickin' Najah! That, again, with her being so good about absolutely sucker punching you with those emotional moments, why? Why? For what? Anyway. Watching you over there. But yeah, again, as I was saying, in talking about how she focused in so much on those moments between characters that were so sweet and that showed their love for one another and their loyalty to each other, I was rooting for Najah, and it just devastated me like this light is doing to me right now. Alright, I give up. Oh well. Okay, the lighting is just gonna be funky for the rest of the video because my one light is not cooperating. Oh well, technology. But yes, as I keep trying to say, That was just absolutely devastating. I was rooting for him the entire time. I loved the way that she was developing the relationship between him and Rin. And I just didn't see that betrayal coming. But she planted all the clues. I felt like a fool. Gosh, it was good. There's so much about Rin that I appreciate in this book. I'm so proud of her for confronting the memory of Alton and being able to finally get rid of his ghost in her brain and to be able to accept and conquer just everything she was struggling with internally, to be able to wield the fire with more precision and control. I'm so proud of her. She had to do so much work in this book to try to make that happen. And gosh, she really went through it again. Yeah, I'm very pleased with how she is continuing to develop as a character, and I really like where she is going. I'm still scared. I still sense devastation on the horizon, and I'm a little nervous for book 3, but excited to see what happens with her character still. But my favorite part, character-wise, was Rin and Katai's relationship. I love them so much. I love them so much, and I so appreciate, because I talked about this in my writing video, how so often in these stories, when you have boy and girl character that are really close, immediately people start to assume that there's some sort of romantic relationship with them, or it is assumed from the beginning that that's just how it's going to develop and it can't be anything else. So seeing, and maybe it does become romantic down the road and I'm just dumb and I don't know yet. I haven't read the 3rd book, but just seeing the fact that they're so like crucially important to each other, and that bond between them is so unique and special and unbreakable. The fact that they are best friends, and that is just as important, in fact the most important thing. I love that she is doing that with their relationship, and I love the two of them working together. They balance each other so well, and just the way you can see their character arcs kind of aligning with one another, so that they are not, I don't want to say two halves of one whole, but again, just that they balance each other so well. I love it so much. Beautiful. Also, all the character deaths. I'm devastated. I can't believe everyone in the psych is dead. Except for the 2 that left, right? Enki and, oh, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the other name. That's bad. I know there's the 2 that left and defected from the psych, but everyone who remained, the fact that they're all dead, it's so awful. And again, because she worked so well on creating those bonds between characters, their deaths were awful to read, and they happened so fast. I'm still hurting. I still feel the pain of that. That was awful. Okay, I want to talk about the Hesperians also. When she first brought the Hesperians on the page, my hackles kind of raised a little bit, because anytime I see Christianity being just immediately lumped into the bad guys category, I get annoyed. A lot of that is because I am a Christian, but at the same time, I think a lot of time, especially historically speaking, we absolutely deserve that criticism. So of course, immediately my hackles raised, because I was like, oh, okay, again, it feels lazy to me to be like, oh, those awful Christians. But with what she's pulling from historically and the way that she is using the Hesperians to talk about colonization, yeah, it needed to be in there. And eventually my hackles went back down and I went, okay, yeah, it's horrible to read about, because I know that is the history of people who believe the same things as me, but it's hard to read about for me personally because it just makes me so sad, but it's completely warranted. And I'm doing the same thing in my writing. My villain of this fantasy series that I'm trying to write is a religious zealot, and I'm playing around a lot with that, I think, because it makes me uncomfortable. So anytime that kind of thing happens on the page, I feel icky about it, but I know I'm supposed to. So I definitely struggle with that this time around, but I appreciate too that she, through Rin's eyes, was able to have that commentary of, I see why you would believe this. I see why that would be attractive. I don't agree with you, but I see the heart of what it is you're supposed to be believing, and it just looks really messed up and messy and complicated. And the fact that she had that comment of, well, like, who am I to say that there couldn't be some other god outside of the pantheon that I know? I don't know, the divine is pretty vast and something I'm still struggling to understand and, like, keep a grasp on. So I appreciated that commentary. It wasn't just this black and white, oh, they're evil, but it was a very valuable commentary on religious colonization and the way that Christians in the past, and I mean still today, but have seen other races, other religions as less than, of needing to be cleansed. It's horrific, and I hate that that's part of my religion's history so much. But again, the criticism, the using that as part of this world building is 100% warranted. And the fact that it made me feel so icky inside means that it was well done. So, the Hesperians. They were tricky to read about. Oh, I don't know how to pronounce this name. I was listening to the audiobook for a bit, and then I switched over to just my physical copy completely. But the Catraids, they were super interesting too. And that coup, oh my gosh, like I didn't even spend that much time with those characters, and I was devastated by that. So the fact that she's setting all these little things in motion to just explode later, I'm so scared for book 3, but I also can't wait to see how these seeds that she's planting now come to fruition in the final book. I feel like it's just going to be this absolutely devastating, epic conclusion. I don't know. We'll find out. And then, yeah, again, as always, I love her attention to the supernatural, the way that she uses figurative language, or not figurative language, but just her writing style and her voice to distinguish between, okay, we are in the natural physical world, and now we're in the divine, in the cosmos. And it's so easy to follow. I talked about this last time too, so I won't ramble on about it forever, but that's such a difficult thing to accomplish, to be able to cue in writing, like, hey, we're leaving the plane that we are all familiar with and going into a plane that is like beyond comprehension and beyond the physical realm, and to be able to just have those cues in your writing where it's clear. I feel like that's so difficult, and she manages it so well, and she continues to manage it well in this. So again, that was another element that I just so appreciate her playing around with, and I'm endlessly impressed by. Okay, speaking of writing style, this was still a brutal read, but it felt a little easier to stomach this time for me because, again, I'm not going to say it 100 times, even though I already have said it 100 times, but the fact that she allows so many moments of tenderness and sweetness between characters means that the more awful stuff felt easier to stomach this time. Easier to stomach, and just made the things that were heartbreaking even more heartbreaking. I appreciate her addition of those moments so much. It added so much texture to what was going on. But I think that works so well stylistically because we're watching Rin mature and we're watching it through her eyes. So in the first book, obviously the focus is going to be on how horrific everything is because she's never seen war. She's never seen battle. And so you're going to feel that viscerally through her eyes. Where this time, even though she's still horrified by what's going on, she's used to it by now, which is awful to consider. But I feel like even the brutal moments were easier to read because you're seeing it through Rin, who understands, like, yes, this is awful, but this is war, and she's becoming accustomed to seeing that and having to deal with it at all times instead of it being this horrible, shocking new thing that she's never experienced before. So I loved that you were able to follow along stylistically through Rin's perspective and understand what was happening was still brutal, but that it's nothing new, which is, I hate even saying that out loud. It's just so awful. But you can see the way in the choices that she makes with her writing style and with the way she chooses to describe things, that that's kind of what's happening. And I thought that was just neat. Again, I feel a little guilty for not giving it a full 5 stars, but I don't know. I think about books that have been 5 stars for me and how so often they're the ones that just tick every single box for me perfectly, and I feel like I can recommend it to anyone. And this is one that I am recommending to people with a grain of salt because I understand I have a certain threshold for things and not everyone else is going to. I have a lot of younger students of mine too that I used to teach that I wouldn't recommend this to because I think it's just, there's a certain level of maturity that you need, so I don't want to go singing its praises to the world because I want to be careful about who's taking that recommendation from me. But if you're a mature reader, you're an adult or an older teen, and you have the maturity to read these things and sit with them and understand their complexities and the tragedy of them, then yes, I think you should read this book. I think you should read these books. Just, I feel, because it was just so good, I feel so bad not giving it a full 5 stars because I think it is really close to it. But yeah, again, it's just going to sit with me, and I want to be aware of what I'm recommending and why. So, also, once I finish these books, I'm trying not to do this right now, but I want to go back and look at all the history that she is pulling from. Again, these are portions of history that I have little to no knowledge of, and I have heard from a friend of mine that it is easy to kind of spoil what's going to happen down the road if you are familiar with the history, so I'm waiting to look into it until I finished reading, but I would love to fill in those knowledge gaps of mine because I think it's fascinating, and it's just something, that's something I always want to be doing, is maintaining my identity as a student. I've always loved being a student. I think I'm a pretty good student for the most part. I do just love to learn and to collect knowledge. So something that I do appreciate a ton about what she's doing is knowing that there is something historical that I can go and look at afterwards and just continue to learn about the world and humanity and other religions and races that are different than my own. Okay, I think that's all. I think I'm done rambling. I have just started The Burning God. I'm maybe like 2 chapters into it, so just started it. Once I finish that, I will also do a full review for it. In the meantime, again, if this is a book that you have read in the past, I would love to discuss with you. I have so many other thoughts I really could share, but I just don't want to take 100 years to make this video. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. I do really enjoy getting to do these reviews and to talk to you guys about the things that I'm reading, so thank you for sticking around. Keep your eye out for the upcoming reviews that I have, and I will talk to you guys soon.